Welcome back to another episode of our crypto discussion. Every week we analyze the crypto market through the lens of the Wyckoff method. Thank you all for the comments and your trading ideas. If you have any questions about the Wyckoff methodology, you can leave a comment below. We will be very happy to reply. As usual, this information is for educational purpose only and it's not an investment recommendation. Please stop the video and read the disclaimer. So let's start with a quick review of the context of the market, but before that, let me announce our guest, Roman Bogomazov. Roman, are you ready?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Alessio, and looking forward to this discussion.
So last week, Roman has shown us the early signs of a reversal in the stock market. If you have missed the last episode of our crypto discussion, I strongly recommend you to watch just the first minutes of the last session, where we have highlighted a change of behavior on the intraday chart of the S&P. Now, what do we see on this chart? The S&P is currently in a trading range that will be with us probably for many weeks. This is a pattern that we've seen so many times during the US presidential elections. In the short term, the S&P is in rally mode and we expect to see a retest of the highs. The first significant level to test is the blue dotted line, which corresponds to the top of the last significant down bar. This is a very important price level where we expect to see an increase of supply. If the market is able to absorb the supply present at this level, the next resistance to test will be the buying climax. At the bottom chart, Bitcoin shows a very similar picture. We are making higher lows on decreasing volume and volatility, and we see a bullish behavior that suggests that Bitcoin is acting in sync with the market. But today, we are currently seeing some weakness in the open, so we want to judge the market by the end of the day. And for this reason, it's very important to focus on the intraday structure of the major crypto indexes. But before that, Roman, your thoughts.
Yeah, well, in terms of the S&P, we are in what Alessio described, a trading range, intermediate trading range, and in a short-term rally. Yeah, this level is very important, as well as the level of the climactic action itself. So we'll just have to see how that rally develops. Yesterday we had a day of absorption at the higher level. Before we had absorption at the low level, then yesterday it was at a slightly higher level, which is very favorable, for the continuation of the rally. Now, in terms of the Bitcoin, the first thought that I have here is we're still within the body of this big bar. So until we actually overcome this, this will still be acting as a short-term bearish pattern right here in the long-term possibly bullish pattern with the higher lows throughout. And we could see how in this area right here, in July or around July, we had the price just touching the support many times, and we kind of doing this again. So the analog, the resolution analog would be kind of the same. We need to do some kind of local breakouts and then more, global breakouts. And we could stay here for some time, because if we're thinking that there is some kind of correlation with the market in general, and we're expecting the market to be in the trading range for before the election, then most likely, the cryptos also are going to have that range-bound type of action, and those are very difficult to predict. The moves up and down in the trading range. Alessia, I also am thinking here, we always like to develop scenarios, different type of scenarios. So what if the crypto or let's say the Bitcoin drops here below the support? How would we interpret that?
Well, I think that it's possible, but we could create a lower low on Bitcoin, which is basically historically weaker than other crypto assets. So I would be very interested to see the whole crypto market. because I think it's very important to see if we can spot some kind of rotation right now or not.
Mhm. Okay, well, we still want to be on the lookout for that type of the scenario. One of the things that I see in our students, if they're not mentally prepared for anything that could happen in the market, it's really hard to switch from one bias to another. So just keep this in mind, guys. All right, let's go to the overview.
So here the first chart is Bitcoin. As we can see on point 1, we see some kind of strength in phase B. At point 2, there's a possible phase C, and then at point 3, a local range. This is what we call a principle within the principle. So now we have really to be really it's important to see if we can spot some kind of spring of this local range or not. This is a crucial point because a failure here would bring price back to the bottom of the range. And if we fail here, we could revisit the bottom. The exchange index at left continues to show some kind of outperformance, and we are already above the level of the last significant down bar. But right now, we are uptrusting that level. Here, there's another information in this chart that I find really, really interesting. In the last week, the shitcoin index, which is the low cap index, has locally outperformed Bitcoin. And I think that this phenomenon is very, very important. So let's focus on the last days of price action preceding this last sell-off. While Bitcoin was consolidating in a narrow range, the shitcoin index was making higher highs and higher lows. What does it mean? This switch between Bitcoin and low caps is generally a positive signal that tells us that investors, after the brutal correction that occurred in early September, are starting to look not just at Bitcoin and major caps, but they're buying those washed out low caps names that were sitting at very oversold level. And the rotation of capitals from Bitcoin to more risky assets is generally a good sign. But this does not necessarily mean that we expect outperformance in the short term. The switch between Bitcoin low caps can go back and forth throughout the bottoming process. And I hope that this information will help not just the campaigners, but also intraday traders, especially when you trade these volatile markets. You always have to keep in mind the whole picture. Otherwise, what could happen to your trades? You look for a bullish entry. In the meanwhile, capitals rotate to other assets, and you are always behind the market. Then you lose faith in your trade, you exit the position, and money comes back to the asset and fools you twice. Is that fault of the composite man? No, the composite man is always your best friend. You just have to listen to what he's saying. So, Roman, what do you think about this idea, in this case, the rotation process?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and you definitely should be always looking for the comparative advantage for the assets that you are buying. They need to show elements of outperformance before they start traveling up. And then if you are selling and you're putting on the short positions, obviously you want to identify that are holding less. Well, also on this chart, I've been thinking about the comparisons of these two reactions, and we could see that the volume signature actually on these two reactions is going down, so the selling is not as aggressive. Also, look at the spread. The spread is actually diminishing in the second case. That also suggests that both effort and the result diminish at the same time. I think the very bullish case scenario would be stopping somewhere here, and then, as Alessia said, recovering back into the trading range, and then overcoming the highs local highs. That would act as a confirmation. So, and we wouldn't be surprised, with this type of, move to the downside where we have initial selling and then it's being tested. Now, what I'm really would be concerned about, if this reaction develops further down, and if it goes below this level right here, where we are actually coming to the support level and the volume signature increases, and we have to see whether this is going to, this is something that's going to happen. Also looking at shitcoin here, going rallying into the resistance and then having some rejection off that, so usually not a very good sign. So again, we are still bound by the trading range, and I would say we are in the trading range still at this point, and we will have to see whether that stopping action is going to be somewhere here. All right, let's go to the next chart. Alessio, what do we see here?
So this is a long-term chart of Monero, almost 2 years of accumulation, round formation that reminds me of what we have seen lately in silver. And in the last month, we have seen local comparative strength. Now look at the relative performance ratio at the bottom. We see here a beautiful base. The relative performance ratio is making higher highs and higher lows in sync with the price action. Very, very bullish. And this could be the breakout of very long-term consolidation. So a big PNF count here. Campaigners have to look closely looking for this formation, and that said, we also want to think what kind of short-term strategy we have here. Generally, this kind of run formation tends to accelerate to the upside on the major sign of strength, and then have deep reactions. It's a pattern that we have seen lately in natural gas, silver, and commodities in general. What do you think about this chart, Roman?
Yeah, I really am liking this chart a lot. I just like it from the position of the causality. And it's not like, for 2 years they've been accumulating this stock. No, they just accumulated it right here. That produced a rally. There was some selling around this area right here. Then when it goes down, there is a little bit of accumulation on this rally right here. And then there is a lot of demand that comes in the attempt to go down and to produce that low. Please notice how the relative strength to the Bitcoin is actually already in the trading range, in the base information, and this is exactly where we want to, sharpen our attention and start paying attention to this particular asset. As Alessio was stating, high highs, high lows for the relative in the price, and I like this formation right here as well, where some supply is coming in, attempts to go down, and yet supply is lower on those attempts, and then we're just recovering. So it looks like a very, very interesting bullish case scenario with the long-term causality. So very interesting chart, Alessio.
Very similar picture here of Binance Coin. In this case, we see a kind of an attempt to uptrust the high that could be classified as a major sign of strength or a minor sign of strength compared to the big formation. The point here is that we are making now a higher low, but I think that the supply that has emerged right on the top of the formation suggests that we want to see some kind of consolidation. By the way, the relative ratio chart is very, very constructive, and I really like the fact that we are making high highs and higher lows in sync with the market. So basically, same story.
Yeah, I would say the same in terms of, again, the causality that we see, the prior leadership that we see, the very dynamic rally into potential sign of strength. I would agree with you that we're probably range bound right now after the climactic action on price and volume. And again, the relative is showing some outperformance, which is very attractive.
And this is Chainlink. We have shown this analog between Chainlink and Apple in the past. And I think it's a very interesting spot right now to start thinking about a possible low in this long-term formation. So of course we want to study this kind of thing on the 4-hour chart. This is a 3-day chart. But as we can see, this structure is very, very similar to what we have seen to Apple, this big, huge consolidation in 2009. So let's go on the 4-hour chart, or if you want to comment on this chart, Roman.
Yeah, let's go to the 4-hour. Well, okay, so a couple of thoughts here. I like this analog. So we have this climactic run, and when we look at the analogs, we look in or trying to find similar price movement in the structure. So it feels to me that we're maybe somewhere here, and even though it doesn't look exactly the same, but the price and volume signature are somewhat similar, and Apple has had a momentous drive up after this point. So let's just see what we could find on the 4-hour chart.
Yes, and Chainlink basically was the leader of this bull run in Bitcoin and the crypto ecosystem. So it's very important. I think it's a very significant asset. So on the 4-hour chart, we see here that we are currently in a trading range. So the context for now is a downtrend. But this kind of formation could be much more complex. Basically, we're seeing a trading range, a spring. We can see on the bottom a lot of volume, effort versus result, a good rally after that, very, very good rally. And now we are trying to consolidate in the lower part of the range. And this is still a constructive price action because supply is very low. And I think that this could be a very crucial point for Chainlink. I would like to see Chainlink to preserve this the support of this range. That would be a very significant retest of the low, and then rallying back to the top of the resistance and possibly breaking this supply line that is very, very important. What are your thoughts on that, Roman?
Yeah, so this area right here looks like a stopping action. So we had some change of behavior right here. We're going into a trading range. We are up thrusting here, and then we are breaking this upsloping structure. And we are concluding that move with 2 attempts to stop. Here's attempt number 1, attempt number 2, and the second one has that volume increase characteristics that are present in the climactic type of actions. The next rally is really dynamic, the best rally that we see in the decline, and that is a change of behavior, an automatic rally. Secondary test follows. We are in phase A. So here, the next test of the lows in the potential phase B or C, the supply definitely is diminished as we approach the support, but we're creating a low. And here's this dilemma, is that there is some momentum that still, has, bearish qualities, and we could retest, as Alessio said, either support or even a low right here. Although the character of the reaction is not that threatening. Actually, the character of this decline, when we look at the spread, when we look at the supply signature, is also not that threatening. It's not as dynamic in the increase of the volume signature and spread as we've seen before. So I wonder, Alessio, if we could use a downsloping structure here and just kind of like see, and we found the resistance here, so this still could be phase B potentially. We have to again think in multiple scenarios. So a possible low is a higher low. Could it be that we could have another low in the downsloping structure? We'll have to see. But for now, I would be looking for some kind of continuation and then reversal. If we would have that reversal and we would break this downsloping line, downsloping resistance right here, that would be the most bullish sign that we could have as a confirmation. Very interesting pattern.
And this is a very low cap crypto, and this is being submitted by one of our followers. And basically on this kind of formation, you have to look for daily charts and look for also some kind of very long-term accumulation, but look at the character of the move that we see. This is a pattern that we usually see on very low caps, stocks and cryptocurrency as well. Look at that very quick rally in phase D, followed by a long period of consolidation, and then another quick rally, and then a much big complex structure that we will see right now. And I think that it's very important to keep in mind that this kind of low caps should be traded following the idea that Roman has introduced of the universal trader. You look for daily charts, you look also for weekly charts, and then you act on hourly chart, because you have to be very, very precise trading this kind of low caps assets. So what are your thoughts on this structure, Roman?
Yeah, kind of the same thoughts. Even though we are still in the stride to the upside here, we definitely have had this conclusion of this big move, climactic volume signature, and then a change of behavior, which suggests a trading range. So I would agree that after this, what seems to be a major sign of strength after the phase C and the causality that was created to the left, we're probably going to just stay here for some time, at least retest the lows one more time after the rally. So yeah, have to kind of wait and observe.
This is the same chart on the 4-hour, on the 8-hour time frame, and you can see that on this time frame, this price action is very, very logical. So we see a beautiful reaccumulation, sign of strength, a huge move, and this is like very, it's the 10 bagger just a couple of days, so it's very impressive. And then we see this very complex structure with a lot of weakness, but this could be still an interesting reaccumulation. So in this structure right now, we see a potential phase C followed by phase D. Now we see some kind of reversal on this chart, so that we could see in the next hour. So basically we could retest at least the support of this big up bar, and that could be still constructive in the long-term structure. But we need to be very, very precise when we trade this kind of asset. So this was a special request, and I think that the concept here is that we have always to keep in mind both time frames, weekly, daily charts, and 8-hour or 4-hour. What are your thoughts on this kind of assets?
Yeah, everything that came before is indeed very beautiful. Change of behavior, no ability of the rally to continue. So shorting here or getting out of the long position is very favorable here, as well as getting out on the actual climactic run. Now what comes next is a little bit more complex. I kind of, even though the rally is the largest rally in the trading range, we're still touching the resistance that was created by the automatic rally here. So that's a little bit questionable and suggests maybe just even like retest, as Alessio has said, of this support level where the first initial stop in action has started. If we do that, and if we stop here, then we find the way to consolidate. Again, we're talking a lot about how some short-term weakness occurred, some supply came to the market, and now we are still need to consolidate and test, that supply. So kind of a similar picture here.
And this is another very low cap crypto, but I think that it's interesting at least to talk about this very low cap assets because they move in a very peculiar way. So we see a long accumulation structure. This is a 3-day chart followed by a major sign of strength, which is basically is hugging the resistance, as David Weis says. And then we see this huge up move. This asset is showing a lot of comparative strength compared to Bitcoin and other assets. But this point is very, very tricky we see that supply signature is decreasing, but we would like to see some kind of overcome of the resistance at this level, because this is a very high risk point. What do you think, Roman, this chart?
Well, I like it. I mean, those low liquidity stocks and low liquidity crypto instruments are very similar in nature. We've discussed it in the last video. This is where you could find a lot of tails on the up and on the down. So that shows that illiquidity. But throughout this illiquidity, you could make sense, of the price action and the volume action when demand comes in and moves the price in a much more kind of like liquid type of manner. We're seeing how momentum is diminishing here, and also supply is coming in this area. We are expecting a reaction to the zone where they bought in aggressively before. So here it is. It comes as a spring, which suggests a vertical absorption. Usually with vertical absorption, we're going to have a quick move up, and then we're going to test. We're going to test at the level of the previous resistance in a kind of like a prolonged trading range, after which we're going to see the breakout and increase of the momentum, and this is exactly what's going on here. I really like this picture, even though it seems like we've just experienced climactic action, but look at how much supply comes at that point. Not a lot, and then all of this is just diminished supply characteristics, and we're having a high low, and now we're trying to overcome as a high low. So it still would be my asset, on the watch list. We might have some kind of reaction here, but reactions to diminishing in quality. So that's a good sign, and a good sign also that it tries to overcome the resistance. So any type of favorable reactions, I would be looking forward, to participate. All right. Well, that's it for today, Alessio. Your last final thoughts?
I think that today's close will be very, very important to judge the price action of the next weeks. So let's be careful and let's closely watch today's close.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and please recommend this series of videos on crypto markets to your friends who trade the same markets. We would really appreciate this. Thank you.